Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Take Control of Your Health. I'm Dr. Corey Stern, and if this is your first time watching, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and suggest that you take a look at all of the videos on this channel because all of them are to help you to optimize your health and not be a victim of the bad guys who are trying to make you sicker, weaker, and stupider. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back, and thank you so much for all your support, for your comments, for your questions and feedback. I really appreciate it. You know that I answer your questions as soon as I can. And if you have not yet had a chance to subscribe, please hit the subscribe button right now. And if you like this video, please hit the like button because it does help other people to find the channel, and people really need this information. And most importantly, if you know somebody that you think would benefit from the information we're talking about, please share this video. So today I want to welcome a really, really, really special guest. She's really special to me. This is a colleague of mine and a good friend. And we've been wanting to collaborate for a very long time. And this is the first time we're getting to do it. This is Dr. Annette Schippel, and she's been a chiropractor for almost 23 years. She has a very busy, successful practice near Springfield, Illinois, and she specializes in functional nutrition and something called phytotherapy, which is using herbs to help get people well. She's also a national and international speaker. She teaches other practitioners to do what she does and teaches them about nutrition, and she's gotten to go to Australia several times to get advanced training and actually had the opportunity to speak in other countries. So today we are going to talk about, this is a favorite topic for both of us. And the topic is, can stress actually make you sick? And how stress affects all the different systems in your body. So welcome. Do you like to be called Dr. Annette or Dr. Schippel?
No, Dr. Annette is perfect.
Okay, great. And I'm Dr. Corey.
Yeah, the other's too formal.
Right, agree. So Dr. Annette, thank you so much for taking the time out of I know how busy you are, and I know you'd like to be actually doing a channel like this yourself and so busy that you haven't had a chance to do it. So I do appreciate you taking the time. So let's get right into our topic today, because as we know, everybody listening knows, stress is a very big issue in our world today. You know, stress is just a part of our life. And I think maybe at the recording of this today is, I don't know, the end of February. I have no idea what the date is, but
yeah.
In 2021, and the world is a really stressful place to live right now.
Yes, I would agree. I think it feels like at a bit of an all-time high, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all experiencing things that we probably have never experienced before.
You know, and it's interesting when we think about, you know, you and I were chatting about what we wanted to talk about, and you know, stress and the stress handling glands has always been one of my favorites. And I think what's an interesting thing is stress has so much to do with perception. And what's interesting about that is someone might perceive only one thing as being part of stress, when the reality is stress it's physical, it is in our environment. So it's also physical, like being obviously in the environment, what we're exposed to, the stressors we're exposed to, chemicals, pesticides, pollution. We can also have physical, over exercise, under exercise, or even a stress of a chronic infection or chronic illness, right? Something that is like brewing, and you may sort of accept that this is your new normal of not feeling well, but that doesn't change the fact of the stress. And then of course, the big one is an emotional stress. And, you know, it's interesting, and you probably experience this when you work with individuals. Sometimes they feel like if the emotional piece seems all good, they don't have stress. You do. And it really, when we talk about, you know, dis-ease, you know, we love that word as chiropractors, that state of dis-ease. I really, truly believe It's that failure to adapt effectively, because we're designed to respond to stress. It is part of our survival. And no matter how far we go, the brain doesn't go, oh, well, this is just an emotional stress. So, we're not going to kick anything in, or, oh, wait, this is a physical stress. So now we will kick in. It doesn't. It just says, oh my God, we're under stress. And then that's where this cascade of things happen. And when we talk about, literally can make you sick, literally can make you more susceptible to getting sick. And I have noticed, and you might have as well, like in this past year, with what we've been faced with, that fear, which is, and to me is like an example of stress, of an emotional stress, having fear will make someone sicker. So that fear of when, and then if they actually, get a virus or whatever, and actually sometimes what I've seen is the fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm sneezing or I have a cough, do I have, do I have that? Do I have the vid, so to speak? And they start going down into this panic mode, start experiencing literally panic attacks, starts to affect their gut. And we know that 70% of your immune system lives within your GI tract. And so it's just like this whole nasty spiral of things. And it's like, gosh, if we could just take a moment and understand all the different ways that it impacts, because I think it gets overlooked, it gets overlooked and it gets medicated certainly the wrong way. And the fact that when it comes to emotional stress, we feel the most stress about things that we feel like we can't control. It's just true. If it feels out of our control, the worry is, I think, sometimes the most damaging. And I think what's so brilliant about your channel is that you're teaching people and giving them the opportunity to take back that control, giving them actually like real information and real solutions of what they can do, because that is where we will never get rid of stress. And anybody says, oh, just eliminate your stress is crazy, and it will only stress you out more. But if we feel like, okay, you know what, I can do this, I can take control, I can choose to turn that channel off because it's taking me down a rabbit hole I don't want to go. I can choose what I put in my mouth. I can choose, a bedtime routine. I can choose the right kind of exercise. And guess what? I can choose to seek out physicians like Dr. Corey, Dr. Annette, people that look at this a little bit differently, that are going to help me have a better vitality and a better immune system. And I think, that's a good way to head into this. I mean, we can talk about the hormonal shifts without a doubt that happen when that body is under stress, and certainly chronic stress. And I think it's been an interesting year. I feel like the year that's never ended, but it's been interesting to see how what some people, come out of this. There's obviously some good things, but how some people have handled the stress and others have just literally been crushed under it,
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah,
I actually have some patients that have not come out of their house
yeah. And
since
it's,
last March.
and what's sad to me is that we are social creatures. We are meant to have social contact. And one of my favorite books, and have you ever read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers?
Yeah.
Fantastic book. But what's interesting, because they're looking at stress that can happen in childhood and how it can, affect you, later on. But one of the things that they were looking at was an orphanage. And I believe I might be messing up what country, but I think it was in Romania. But we've heard those stories, but there would be perfectly healthy babies and children put in these orphanages and not touched, having literally no physical contact, and watching them get sick, and many of them even dying. And it's kind of like, so what we need and what nourishes us and what helps the body to respond is so important. And I think a lot of that has been lost. But the other component, if I just want to break it down kind of simply, In a stress response, cortisol surges. That is part of our stress response. And so would another hormone to sort of balance that effect of cortisol, which is DHEA. The problem is in this prolonged stress, so we're constantly worried, we're constantly whatever's happening, maybe our diet, our sleep, all these different things. We get at the heart of it a dysregulation of that whole axis. And most people have heard of this, HP axis, hypothalamus, pituitary. And even if we don't really understood all the enzyme pathways, I do know that certain enzyme pathways can get upregulated with different stress responses. So just to kind of put it in a nutshell, over time, what happens is the body, because you'll die without cortisol. So it's kind of like that rob Peter to pay Paul. If the body is starting to get more depleted and things are happening, the body will make a preferential shift to cortisol, and DHEA tends to go down, even though there are, different enzyme pathways in there. But the thing about it is when cortisol dominates, it's immunosuppressive. When cortisol dominates, it causes a breakdown of the gut lining. So therefore we start having gut issues. We start to being allergic to food. We start to struggle to, digest our food, because one of the other things is when the body has this perception of being in stress, digestion is no longer the priority. We know that is we're supposed to be in the relaxed state or the parasympathetic state, not fight or flight. And stress is in that fight or flight. So now we're not digesting effectively. If you can't digest and absorb your nutrients, how are you going to rebuild yourself? How are you going to have a strong and healthy body? And this is explaining how we look at that collateral damage that happens with this chronic stress, where we don't have the support, and we can talk about the nutrients, herbs and things like that. But even in that, and I just want to point this out. So we're going, okay, cortisol can elevate, it's immunosuppressive, cause a breakdown of the gut lining. Then we start getting into, when cortisol is up here, it brings blood sugar up, but then it also antagonizes how insulin works. So we become increasingly insulin resistant, which means we're in a greater state of inflammation, which means that we're still stressing the body, and that there is, we got to put out the fire. We got to put out the fire. Then what comes into play is the thyroid. This will have an impact in the thyroid and ultimately result in lower of our active thyroid hormones, such as T3, and an increase of inactive, which is known as reverse T3. And if that wasn't enough, and this is physiology, people, this is not anything that me and Corey started talking about, like, hey, I think this is a great way to yank everybody's chain. This is literally how your body functions, because stress is that priority. But the other thing that I think that doesn't always get talked about, but gets medicated, is our reproductive system. So when we look at when it's part of that stress response, hypothalamus, pituitary on down, it will also cause a stimulation of prolactin. So we have some pituitary hormones. So in particular in stress, we can have ACTH, which is more specific to the cortisol and DHEA. Stress will also stimulate TSH. So there's that thyroid component, but it will also increase prolactin. And if that response by the adrenals doesn't happen quick enough and vigorously enough, these other hormones can stay elevated. And you may go, well, okay, what's the big deal? And why is she even bringing up prolactin? What does that mean? Well, when prolactin's up, depending on how this happens, it interferes with what's called a pituitary hormone known as LH. What that does, though, is that if it is suppressed, so they have an inverse relationship. So here they are, but if prolactin is up here and stays up here, it suppresses LH. If LH is suppressed, it affects the male's body signal to make more testosterone. So then he's not getting the signal he needs. So that affects his vitality. If it happens to a woman who's still in her cycling years, it can keep her from ovulating. So she doesn't ovulate. So now she stays estrogen dominant for the rest of that cycle. She's got more inflammation. She's got more impact into the thyroid, into the immune system. And it turns into this nasty little seed. And one of the things you and I were talking about kind of at the beginning and chatting just a little bit ahead of time was the emotional component. Well, guess what? When prolactin goes up, it suppresses dopamine. One of the big things with low dopamine is anxiety. anxiety that feels like nothing you've ever had before. And it can kind of like slam you in the gut because again, of the body does want to be well, but if you beat it up long enough, we know this kind of as a chiropractor as well, but if the stress continues long enough, it's just doing the best it can to keep you upright and walking. You just may not feel so great anymore or look so great anymore. And that I think is, I've just given like the 5-minute scenario though, but of how this impact into the stress and how it sort of seeps into everything else just gets overlooked. And what do? We self-medicate. We look for the alcohol. We look for the comfort food. We look for the sugar. Try to like strive to get some endorphins going by over exercising and thereby creating more inflammation, more stress, or worse, we get medicated. The thyroid gets medicated. We get on a PPI or an antacid. You're on an anti-anxiety med. Now you can't sleep. So then you're on all of this stuff. And the reality is it's such a simple solution when you come and work with someone like you or like me that can tap into going, okay, let's take a step back. What are the things that are going to help balance and help support the stress response? Because again, it is not about ending stress. It's about changing our response to it. Yes. Do we need to work on our own lifestyle? Like working on what are our triggers and knowing when to step away, right? Not look at something. When it comes to what you put in your mouth, you have that choice, right? You can always kind of tell my patients there's like good, better, best, because sometimes just being good enough is going to help us. Like, I mean, I always look at like, I'm not the best all the time. I waver, good, better, best. I just try not to fall off the good wagon into like absolute crap. But not all of us are perfect, but having at least something that we can work towards. But that is the other components. It's not, and that's where your control comes in. That's where we can take a little bit of responsibility back and, go, okay, this is my new journey. This is what I'm going to do.
Tell you, on the subject of responsibility, one of the things that I have to teach my patients is that just because you don't feel like doing something doesn't mean that you should not do it.
Right.
And then the other way around, just because you want to do something that isn't good for you doesn't mean that you have to do it. So I actually have to teach people to talk to themselves like, okay, I tell them, okay, pretend that you have a grown-up Annette and a child Annette. Mm-hmm. And the grown-up Annette says to the child Annette, no, Annette, you can't eat that cookie. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
And the child Annette says, but I want it. And the grown-up Annette says, here, have an apple instead, right?
Yeah.
So I find myself having to, and this is, I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but in recent years, this is getting worse, where people are just like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. Or I don't feel like doing that, or it's too hard. So in order to be healthy and take full control of your health and take responsibility for it, sometimes you have to train yourself to actually make choices or do things that you don't feel like doing. Yeah. And my self-talk is just shut the heck up and just do it. Like I tell myself, too bad, you got to do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to start this channel, and
I know you were telling me like I just
shut up and do it. You need to. So
well, and I think that I tell people sometimes I get tired of the whining in my head. If I'm whining about my joints hurt, I don't like my weight, or I don't like my energy, I mean, whatever it is, I kind of get tired of the whining and that. And I think we all have that point we got to get to. One of the things that I think is so beautiful about the tools that we've utilized for, however many years we've been doing this work, this is where I love going back to like the 21-day cleanse, because if you break it down in smaller chunks, so for people that are listening, I get it. Change is hard. And when you feel like I think sometimes the worst thing we can tell someone is they can never, like you tell me I can never have something again.
Yeah.
I will
No, I never say
obsess
that.
over it.
Right.
I know I would obsess over it and be
Right.
like, okay. And then the minute I'd have it, I would be like, oh, you blew it in that. I can't believe you did that, kind of thing. So I
You
think
break it
that,
down into a smaller, so the 21
yeah,
cleanse that Dr. Annette is talking about is just cleaning out your body for
mhm,
21 days. You can do anything for 21 days. And if you can't do it for 21 days, you do it for 10 days. Uh,
yeah. But you got it. And I think that, you're right, though. You have to want to do it. And and it's like, I look at it this way. We're here to assist. We're here to help. We're kind of the coaches. We're here to guide you. But I also I use this phrase a lot, Dr. Corey, I'll say, you cannot supplement your way out of trouble.
right. Mm-hmm.
You can help, but you
Right.
cannot supplement your way out of trouble. I've tried it. It didn't really work, but it's pulling it all together. But what I will say, in addition to that, though, is that sometimes the right supplements, the right herbs help you feel like you've got this, like you can do this, and you don't feel so overwhelmed. You don't feel so hopeless.
Right.
Um, Brings up that energy level. So you're like, all right, I can get away from the sugar high, which gave me this false energy, because now I'm feeling like this true, real energy that is going on. And my God, I mean, just digestive support. I don't know if you can digest and absorb the good food that you're eating, real energy comes from that. So
Right. Because when you're nutritionally deficient, you literally cannot handle stressors as well. So
no,
what you
you
were
can't.
saying earlier about, stress is always going to be there. It doesn't go
Right.
away. Changes form, it changes intensity. And there are stressors happening all the time that you're not even aware that are stressing you. Like I like to use as an example walking into a store like CVS or Walmart, where you're faced with literally thousands of different choices of products.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're walking in the store to buy shampoo and you have like what? I don't know, 200 different shampoos there. That's not biologically normal in nature.
I
There's
know.
not 200 shampoos. So in nature, you don't need, soap for your hair and soap for your face and soap for your body and soap for your teeth and soap for your
Mm-hmm.
clothes. It's just like one thing. So those are like everyday insidious stresses that you're so just habituated to that you're not even realizing it. So you're constantly under those kinds of modern day stressors,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to all the other things that might be happening in your personal life and in the world at large. And when you are chronically stressed, your body is on high speed and it's doing all those hormonal imbalance things, and then you're burning minerals like crazy,
Yep.
and you become minerally deficient, especially if you're not eating excellent food and taking good quality minerals. So once you start to feed the body
Yeah.
the nutrients that it's missing, the body then and the mind is able to go, oh, okay, I can handle this to some degree. And
Well,
um, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, when we think about, it's one of those things, when you think about the phases of the stress response, we have the acute response, which is, we rally, we do what we need to. When we get into that chronic stress, and this is really where the breakdown really does happen, when the HP axis does get dysregulated. And like you were pointing out, eating things, but if you can't absorb and digest, and that's because you're under stress, and really the blood is moved away from the digestive tract to major muscle groups, because your brain has decided that you're trying to flee. But I tell people, like, when you look at that, and it's the old model is the Hans Selye, but regardless of which model you look at, once you're in like that phase 2, which is that maladapted phase, and that means that you can have experienced cortisol's highs and lows, it's kind of like, okay, you're kind of, I call it like you're in that sort of roller coaster. How long someone can stay there, nobody knows. It really depends on your diet, depends on how you grew up, depends on your background, depends on where you live, depends on your life and all these other things. And that's the tricky part. And this is why I love the work that we do, because we will never be bored in our life because everybody is unique and there is nothing cookie cutter. But the reality is that there gets to a point where we no longer adapt very well. And this is where we get into that exhaustive state. And then it's like, you may not be what we call, as like catabolic, with tissue breakdown and immune compromise, but then you are depleted. So the energy to rebuild is not so great. And this is not, we both know we're not talking about a disease state. We're not talking about Cushing's. We're not talking about Addison's. We're talking about that functional exhaustion that is just from like prolonged stress. Sometimes I use the example of running, and I think just because most people hate it, and if you have run, then you also kind of like, if we've all been in school, we know there was like those really good runners, and then there's the ones that kind of struggle. But just imagine if stress was like running, and it's like, so the first time said, your body says, okay, you know what, we got to rally. So we got to go out and we got to run that quarter mile, or maybe it's 100 yards, whichever feels good. Even if you're a marathon runner, you're like, oh, I went and ran 6 miles and it was like nothing, but you go and you run it. But then the minute you come back, it's like a 5-minute rest. Well, sorry, we got something else to do. So just think about it. If you kept having to run and you weren't getting that recovery time, you weren't getting the nutrition, you weren't getting the sleep, at some point, you're no longer running. You're walking, maybe crawling at times, or just stopping. And that's, and it's kind of like it's so crazy because we will take better care of our car than we will our body.
I say that all the time.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Mm-hmm. And we're so willing to look at our body. If you were going to compare it to a car, I always say you're putting duct tape over the check engine light. When you do, especially when you do a pharmaceutical, it's just a piece of duct tape over the check engine light. You did not fix anything.
It's worse than that, because the duct tape probably doesn't cause any harm, but the pharmaceutical will.
Well, the ignoring, this is the way I look at it. If you ignore that your body was trying, the symptoms, the check engine light, it's trying to get your attention, but you just cover that up, you suppress it with the medication, you didn't change the problem. And so the problem will get bigger. And then before you know, it's going to be your battery light. And then it's going to be, the gas light. And it's going to be the oil light. And how much can you keep doing that? So anyways, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the biggest problem that I run into with that is simply that most people are seeing medical doctors who are trained to put them on medication and don't have any other solutions. And I had interviewed a holistic pediatrician on my channel, which I highly recommend you watch that interview. And he said the very first day of medical school, the dean of the school addressed the class and said, nutrition has nothing to do with health. And so that is their viewpoint. That is not all of them. There are some medical doctors that think differently, but in general, what they think about is, okay, you have this symptom. Let's say you have high blood pressure, and high blood pressure is a very common symptom of the stress response. Right?
Oh, yes.
When you're stressed, your blood pressure elevates. So you have high blood pressure, so we put you on a drug to lower your blood pressure. But that's all they actually know how to do.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is that I understand that like the physicians are really doing what they've been taught. I think where the frustration is that I think a lot of times the people don't understand that it's kind of like you're going to the mechanic for your computer, your laptop at home. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not even the right professional. But I do tell people, like, this is not to make the medical profession, the MDs, the bad guys. They are literally trained. You have a symptom, this is the drug. And they keep doing that unless there is a reason to do surgery, but they don't know about lifestyle medicine. Most of them don't know about nutrition. And then some of them do believe what the dean tells them, that nutrition will make zero difference in their health, which it makes me a little crazy because in this day and age, I'm sorry, you should know better. But I get that the tools that they have are the drugs that they give.
The problem is that there are a lot of people who only get their information from their medical doctors and
I
they don't
know.
question it. So I was talking to someone today who had watched my video on cholesterol, and she told me, yeah, I'm on a statin. And I said, why? And she, but her cholesterol was actually okay. It wasn't
Mhm.
bad. So this is something that happens a lot where, oh, it's a prevention and you don't have any other source of information. So that's actually the point of this conversation, is to give you other sources of information
Yeah.
so that you know that you don't necessarily have to go on a pharmaceutical. Even if that's what your medical doctor is recommending, you want to explore other options. And what Dr. Annette and I have found, and after years of practicing and seeing results, is that when you correct someone's nutritional deficiencies, there's generally no need for pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
because people don't have a Lipitor deficiency.
No,
They
no, or Tylenol
don't, right,
deficiency or,
exactly,
yeah, I love that.
right.
Yeah, I think that it is unfortunate. I would love to see that, there would be a coming together of minds. I think I'm being overly optimistic because I still hear it all the time. Or, and patients are frustrated. And don't get me wrong, we know there are patients who don't care. They don't want to change their lifestyle. They don't want to change anything. And they fully believe that the medicine is the right way to go, or a
Those are the
pill for
people that
every
are not
ill.
listening to this
Yeah,
channel.
and that's okay too.
Right.
Everybody has their own path, but you're right. When I cannot tell you how many times I've explained the role of cholesterol. So, okay, so tying it in, because I know you did this on purpose, but cholesterol, I know, because I know you. But cholesterol is a precursor to your steroid hormones, people, which means your stress handling hormones need cholesterol to be formed. So guess what? When you're under stress or you're under inflammation, most likely it's going to go up. And that's okay. I actually worry more when someone's cholesterol is too low. That's my bigger issue. And even if it is, let's say it is 240, 260, you got to look at the whole pattern. You don't shoot the messenger. You
Right.
look at, well, what is the pattern? What are the LDLs, the HDLs? What are the triglycerides?
Right.
Is it all in the right relationship to each other? And looking at someone's history. I mean, but we get focused on a number. We don't. I shouldn't say that. I would say that they're taught to focus on a number, and if the number doesn't fit where they want it to fit, then the medication is prescribed. And you and I have been in this long enough to see that what used to be considered normal as far as cholesterol is no longer. What used to be considered normal as far as a blood pressure, that's not even normal anymore. They want it so low. And then I've got older people that are on blood pressure meds that their blood pressure isn't stable anyways, because guess what? Stress. And so when it kicks in, it drops it too low, and then they're getting dizzy
Right.
and they're passing out, and then
Yep.
they're at risk for a fracture. It's like,
Right. Right.
ah,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. When I give people supplements to help them reduce their blood pressure, and help them to be able to wean off medication, I tell them that if you start to get dizzy, it means that you need less medication,
that's
which
right.
is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
You want
interesting.
that.
I had someone recently, and she's a fairly new patient to me, and most of what we started with was like the gut, and she was a PE teacher, so just very very health conscious and things like that. But she had recognized that she definitely went down the rabbit hole of social media, everything that was going on with in the world, the pandemic, COVID, the election, and just there was so much drama. It spiked her blood pressure super high, like really high. And it was interesting because she was coming in for a follow-up, shortly after that. She said she took 4 days, shut off her phone, the TV. She got outside. She just took time, meditate, or you could pray, whatever feels good for you. But she basically did self-care, Corey. And like after 4 days, she was back down to what was normal for her, was like 110/70. But she had it like 160s, 170s, over 100. And it's like, and that is what stress can do. And I'll just tell you, the physiology, people, is that when we talk about this, is that when you're under stress like that, cortisol goes up and it causes vasoconstriction, which causes your blood pressure to go up. But that's part of the body's stress mechanism to try to get blood shunted out to all your major muscle groups. But you're not supposed to stay there,
So that you can run away or fight, except that if the stress is happening while you're on your computer or your phone,
Yep.
running,
It's happening basically here,
right. Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like, it's just really a fascinating thing. And and it kind of ties into the cholesterol, seeing the same thing. And I will tell everybody who's listening, you have to be your own advocate. And this is what you were saying just a minute ago. Corey, is like, you don't have to do anything. You don't need to be bullied by any health professional to take a drug, have a surgery, have a procedure of any kind if you don't want to. And I think we feel like, a lot of people feel like they have to give their power up, to some of these health professionals. And you need to be your own advocate. I always tell people, when it comes to medication, 2 people can take you off a drug. Ideally, it should only be the physician who prescribed it, or you,
right?
You as an individual.
Right.
But people have lost their voice. And I think that's why you had to do this channel. You had no choice, because people are losing their voice and they need to know that there are other options out there. I always feel like our role, because you and I are both teachers. I don't know if you've told people how much you've taught as well, but we're both teachers. And being a doctor actually means teacher. So there's that. But we teach our patients to feel empowered. We teach them how to live in this world, not so that they're dependent on, supplements and herbs. I say those are to fill in the gaps. Those are to fill in the gaps where you need them, or, when your body is under more demand. But food, as you can eat it, as exercise, sleep, that's medicine.
Supplement means supplement to
exactly
a healthy diet.
Yeah, exactly. So I get very passionate. Okay.
Well, that's why I love you.
I know. That's why we love each other.
I tell my patients that you need to decide how you want to handle your health and your body. And then if you're going to see a medical doctor, they have to be in agreement with how you want to handle your health and your body, because it's your decision. You're the owner of the body. Exactly. And like you were comparing it earlier to a car, this body cannot be traded in. It's not on lease. So if it breaks down, you can't just go and get a new one. And you can't really get that many replacement parts. Yes, you can get, a new knee or a hip, but aside from that, not so much. And
it starts to get trickier.
Right, exactly. And if you are seeing a medical doctor who is in disagreement with how you want to handle your body, then the good news is that you don't have to go through divorce proceedings. You can just find a different doctor. Yeah. And that's one of the things. I'm very fortunate to have medical doctors that I work with that come to me as patients that are in agreement with how we do things. Yeah. And can help. So I have people to refer people to. If you're that's nice. If you're listening and you're really struggling, I've been doing virtual consults. I can help you. I can, find local people for you. We're happy to do that. Just, put a comment. I always put my email address on the description of the video so you can find me. And we'll put Dr. Annette's website as well, in case you just happen to be in her area. And do you do virtual consults?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. All right. So we both do virtual consults. And I mean, ideally, it's always great if you can see somebody locally, if you can literally,
I
um,
agree.
but these days it's the world being the way it is right now, more people are opting for virtual, and that's fine. I've been having people get great results virtually as well. And just to summarize, because we're coming toward the end, and I just noticed that my computer has the date on it. So I didn't know what date it was earlier, but it was right there. It's February 26, 2021. Just to summarize, basically what we're saying is that stress affects pretty much every system in your body in a negative way, especially when it's chronic stress, which most of us are experiencing right now. And you need to take some action. You need to take steps to reduce or minimize the negative effects of it. And those steps would be, number one, some important positive lifestyle changes like eating nutrient dense food, which is what this whole channel is about, possibly taking some good quality supplements. And Dr. Annette and I both use what we call whole foods, so supplements made out of food and made out of herbs, because that's really where the nutrition is. They're not synthetic, they're not chemicals. And to do things like the self-care that you were mentioning earlier, you actually need sleep. Your body requires sleep. That's where you produce most of your human growth hormone for repair. And you need to move. Your body requires movement. You don't have to run a marathon, but from a biological perspective, your body, is supposed to be moving a lot more than our bodies move, especially now when people are working from home. They're on their laptops all day long. I'm seeing a lot more people complaining about back pain and neck pain because they never change
they're like this
setup. They never change their setup, so their chair isn't good. Their computer's too low or too high or whatever it is. And then we also didn't mention the stress of the electromagnetic fields, the bad electromagnetic fields coming out of your devices, which is negatively affecting your health. So I have a video about that on my channel as well. I had her talk about that, and things like drinking good water, right, and staying hydrated. A lot of people are chronically dehydrated and don't know it. A lot of people avoid eating salt because they think salt is bad for them, and then that screws up their adrenals. You need salt and cholesterol to make hormones. So those kinds of things. And then lastly, to find some kind of system or practice or technique that helps you to be able to calm your body down no matter what's going on. So you mentioned meditation and prayer. Those are two things that I use, because you can actually trick your body into thinking everything is fine, even if it's not, right? So your body doesn't know.
And just like you can trick it into things being worse than they are.
Right.
I mean, you're right. It goes, I mean, can I just mention like a good book for people?
I'll put it in the description.
That would just be so encouraging is The Upside of Stress. I'm trying to remember the author, but we could find it. But the Upside of Stress, she actually did works with AJ Crum, who did some research on how we perceive things can physically affect the body in a negative way. So absolutely. I just love it. But it was kind of nice. Like we can look at why zebras don't get ulcers and then the upside of stress.
Right. But I talk about all the time. My example always is two people jumping out of an airplane, and one of them thinks it's great fun and the other one is terrified. And it's not the event itself that's causing the stress, it's your perception of the event, how you respond to it. So you can actually, with stress management techniques, you can calm your body down so that you stop the stress response from harming you. And there's a lot of different things you can choose from. You can just go and go on your internet browser or even on a channel like or a venue like YouTube and just put in stress management programs. And there's Tibetan singing bowls that
Yeah.
calm you down. There's gongs, there's music, there's, frequencies, there's
Right.
tapping techniques, there's,
Cigarette tapping.
yeah, there's
Well,
progressive relaxation. There's all kinds of things that you can do and should do on a
there's
regular basis.
yeah, and there's also really good research into just walking, not not like power walking, but just doing a nice walk 60 minutes a
Right.
day has been shown in research to lower elevated cortisol levels.
Yes,
Like,
it,
so
it
it
does.
covers all the things you're talking about. Get up, get moving, get your posture up, but also helping, balance, especially a high stress and into a better stress response. And you know what I do sometimes? I watch music videos or funny videos. I
Mhm,
just I'll just go on like either in YouTube or the
mhm.
Facebook video because I can't watch anything else, and it just makes me happy.
Yeah,
Just
just laugh. Laughing is good for you,
oh
and
my gosh.
distraction is good, and
Yeah.
just taking your attention off of the thing that's worrying you. So one of the things I find myself needing to do all the time is teaching people how to stop worrying, especially when they're supposed to be sleeping and they're tossing and turning all night, worrying about a thing, which is one of those major causes of stress. There's actually nothing wrong or nothing happening, but you're worried about something going wrong, or yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I train people to stop doing that, because then if you're not
Yeah.
sleeping, you're never going to recover. You're never going to repair. Um, I'm going to be doing a video on secrets of staying young, anti-aging secrets, because I'm going to be turning 58 very soon.
Yay for you. Yay. You look amazing.
Thanks. And that's mainly due to good nutrition and good lifestyle habits. So one of the most important factors that people don't really understand is the good quality sleep.
Oh, it's so huge.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so huge.
Because
Have
your
you
cortisol is going to run high if you're not getting enough
yeah.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
And you're going to
awesome.
gain weight. You're going to gain weight too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to be fat and, overweight and
And
wrinkly
grumpy
and
and tired.
grumpy, right, exactly. You need to find a way to sleep. And by the way, mineral deficiency can cause insomnia.
Mhm.
So it's one of the things that we find ourselves needing to correct,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Annette.
Thank
This was
you.
great. And there's a lot of topics you're expert on. So maybe we'll bring you back to talk about another one soon.
It was fun. It was a privilege and an honor to be on here with you, Dr. Corey. We found our way, right?
Yeah,
So
we usually do.
yeah, this is good. Thank you so much.
All right. And thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And we'll see you again in the very near